We're going to talk about three different types of special parallelograms, rectangles, rhombi, and squares. The first of the three types we're talking about are rectangles. So, what are the properties of rectangles? Okay, rectangles are a special type of parallelogram. And so that means we have all the properties of parallelograms. And if you remember, there are 6 properties of parallelograms, or 6 ways to prove that you have a parallelogram. You could have 2 pairs of opposite sides that are parallel, 2 pairs of opposite sides that are congruent, 2 pairs of opposite angles that are congruent, consecutive angles that are supplementary, one pair of opposite sides that is both parallel and congruent, and last but not least, diagonals that bisect each other. But wait, there is more, because this is a subtype or special type of parallelograms. Remember that rectangles have 4 right angles. You learned that in elementary school. What's new to high school is the fact that diagonals are congruent. So what that basically means, and I'm going to use number 1 here to talk about it, triangle PQT will end up being congruent to triangle STR. And then the 2 triangles on the left and the right are also congruent to each other. So you end up with 2 sets of congruent triangles when you have a rectangle. And that means all of that congruent triangle information is fair game. All right, so I have a rectangle here. I can immediately fill in opposite sides are congruent. Let's see, I'm going to pull out this diagonal. I know I have a right angle here, right? So 10, 24, I can use the Pythagorean theorem to find that my diagonal is 26. I know that diagonals bisect in a rectangle. So this is 13. All 4 of those pieces there are 13. Let's see. I think that's all I've got at this point. So let's fill stuff in. QR is 10. SR is 24. SQ is 26. PR is 26. And QT is 13. All right, next one. We've got another rectangle. That means I've got my 4 right angles up here. Let's see. I'm just going to put them here. This angle and 64 are supplementary. So 180 minus 64, 116. Okay, let's pull out this triangle. $64. I know that my diagonals are congruent to each other and they bisect. So that means I have an isosceles triangle. Doesn't that make you excited? So base angles theorem, these 2 angles are congruent. 180 minus 64 is 116 divided by 2, that's 58. So that means, and I'm going to switch colors here, this is 58, 58, 58, 58. This one was 64. Let's see, 90 minus 58. 32 for all the rest. 32, 32, 32, 32. So now that my diagram is annotated, I am going to fill this in. All right, at this point, I want you to pause your video, and I want you to try numbers 3 and 4 on your own. I lost my recorder here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, check your work here. I started in number 3 with the fact that these two angles were complementary, solved for x, and then I used alternate interior angles here and here in order to know what expression to use to solve for angle JHI. Similar situation in number 4. I had complementary angles. Then I needed to use alternate interior angles in order to figure out which expression to use for angle XZW. All right, so for your summary, I want you to list the 8 properties that pertain to rectangles and be sure you identify which 6 are because it's a parallelogram and which 2 are just because it's a rectangle.